Shalom, my friends, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And oh my God, speaking of New York things, here's a man who knows so much about New York, particularly Greenwich Village, but also lots of other places. And wait, let me do this. See, I am playing the bongo, because he's been doing it there, look at that. But he knows a lot more about it because he was the leader of a band called the Bongos, and he also has tons of solo material and records that he has produced, including for people like, I'm not kidding, Tiny Tim. He's also an author. His books include Frontman and the recent Music and Revolution. And one of the reasons that he's on is that if you happen to be in Los Angeles in, when is this? In late September, he will be part of the Bolan Birthday Bash, and he will tell you about that. Anyway, the main thing is with us in the neighborhood today is the one, the only, Richard Barone. Shalom, Richard.
Hello, Rabbi. Thank you so much for having me.
You know what angers me about? How old are you?
Oh, I don't. That is undisclosed information.
Okay, you still look like Beaver Cleaver. I'm telling you, you could pass for a 30-year-old. What the hell?
I don't know.
Look at me, and I'm only 27. So this is a bothersome thing.
Hey.
Shalom to you, Richard. First of all, tell us I know it's a few weeks away, but the Marc Bolan of T-Rex Birthday Bash. What is it?
Well, I'm thrilled to be producing with Marc Bolan's son, Roland Bolan.
Wait, Roland Bolan, really?
Roland Bolan. Well, yeah. It was the 70s when they're, the 1970s, and Marc Bolan's dear friend David Bowie had Zoe Bowie. So of course.
At least he wasn't Moon Unit. I get it.
At least he's not Moon Unit.
Yeah, right.
Roland is great, and Roland is a musician as well, and was born in the late 70s. And Marc unfortunately died in a car crash before he was 30. So he was a very young rock star, and Roland was just 2 years old. But Roland lives in Los Angeles, and they've never done a T-Rex tribute. In other words, a tribute to his father in Los Angeles. So I went to him and said, we have to do this. And Roland was really excited about the idea. So we're putting together Bolan Birthday Bash right around his father's birthday on September 28th in Los Angeles at the Pendry Hotel's beautiful Sunrose room, a gorgeous room. I was there for the Grammys this year, February, and attended a party there and fell in love with the space, and it all worked out. They asked me right there if I would do a T-Rex tribute, and I said yes. It came out of the blue as an offer, and it's a very exciting offer.
So can I ask who might be some of the people who are?
Yes, I will tell you a few, because we haven't announced yet who's all in it. And also we've invited a lot of people that have not yet answered the invitation. But I will say that there are two of the Bangles, one of the Bongos, a Bolan, Roland, and a cowcell.
What? That makes sense. They're all kind of part of that whole.
All different, and each different in their own way, but doing Marc Bolan songs. We're really focusing on the songs. And we're gonna have 3 guest DJs in between the sets of music, and it's very exciting. And also, if I may add, there's a documentary about T-Rex called Angel-Headed Hipster, which, if you know the phrase, that comes from Allen Ginsberg's Howl.
All right, I know Ginsberg, of course. Yeah,
of course. So Rabbi Ginsberg. So the the title comes from Howl, and the movie is again about Marc Bolan's music, not so much the celebrity of T-Rex, because in England, Marc Bolan was a true celebrity on the cover of every magazine and newspaper. But this movie, Angel-Headed Hipster, focuses on the music. And he was a very unique songwriter and musician. So the movie is unique and exciting.
Well, you have said in other interviews that T-Rex was your most important, most foundational, more even than the Beatles and more than the Stones and
well, yes, the Beatles were always there. They had already existed, and the Beatles were foundational, I guess you would say, fundamental. But it's when I saw T-Rex in concert in high school that all hell broke loose, and I had to play guitar on stage and be wild and be on my knees. And he was a very wild performer, Marc Bolan, and that energy and that excitement is, in a way, what T-Rex was doing in a way was sort of one of the doors that opened for punk music a few years later.
Because
It
you
was
were
a
never
combination.
glam. The
He
Bongos
was a
were
glam. He was
yeah.
glam slash punk. You know, he even used the word punk sometimes. And he was just there. And you know, when he at the end of his life, when on his last tour, his opening group was the Damned. He was really very open to where the other glam artists were kept their distance. Marc Bolan was very open to the punk movement. He was a smart guy, very smart
Yeah,
guy.
no, he was. And
Yeah,
by the way, Jewish.
absolutely Jewish. Mark Feld and Roland Feld, of course. The family is Jewish. Yeah, and I love, yeah, I love that. I love that about Marc Bolan.
The good thing he changed it. Otherwise, he'd have named the kid like Meld.
Yes.
Meld,
Well, no,
Meld.
that's cute. That would be cute. But I think with Bolan, to be honest, they always wonder where the name came from. I think it's sort of he wanted to create a name. And in a way, it's a little bit inspired by Dylan, Bob Dylan, Bolan. There was a little bit of that. He was a Dylan fan.
Bolin, Bob
Yeah.
Dylan. Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Something about that. It was something that there. He was a very young artist. He was about 14 years old when he was signed to his first record deal, Marc Bolan. And he was doing very folky music then. And I think he did a Bob Dylan. He actually covered Bob Dylan songs. So some people say, yeah, maybe it came from that. He was
Now, let
looking
me
at,
ask you.
when you make a name, also, just one last thing about names, I think when you make a name for an artist, it's also you want to kind of conjure up something. I think he was trying to conjure up this folk singer in persona that sounded a bit like Bob Dylan, maybe, you know, and but he was very close to his Jewish heritage,
Well,
regardless.
are you?
Yeah.
No, you're now. What
I'm
are you?
half. I'm 50%. 50%.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know you were a half.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, now
Yeah.
tell us about the back half of your family. That's.
No. They're all good. They're all good.
Do you still have are your parents, I assume, have passed a while back?
Uh,
But
my mom is with us, but that's why I'm not full because my mom's not Jewish. Yeah. Yeah.
all right. So she's
Yeah.
with you
Yeah.
in spirit and in body, but
Yeah.
just not in religion. This is a
Yeah.
do you have a family? Do you have a wife and kids and all those kinds of things?
No.
All right, all right.
No.
Just kind of so you lived the life of a traveling, touring kind of
I'm a troubadour.
Well, is that what you kind of envisioned for yourself, or did you
Yes.
say rock star?
No.
When
I've
you
always, I grew up in the music business. When I was 7 years old, I was a radio DJ on Top 40 Radio in Tampa, Florida.
right, yeah.
I was exposed to a lot of artists and met a lot of the artists as they came through Florida. That's how I got to meet and work with and produce Tiny Tim. You
When you were
mentioned Tiny Tim earlier.
16,
I was 16 by then, but that being on the radio at a young age got me contacts with the music industry, music promoters. It's been my entire life.
So who
So
is the most life-changing person that, whether it's a promoter or an actual celebrity artist, between like 7 and 14, 15, 16, that you were like, oh, was there one like galvanizing moment?
Well, I think seeing Marc Bolan and T-Rex, I was 15 or so. I was 14 or 15.
But
I
that was a
met,
concert. This isn't someone
yeah,
interviewed or
were really the first real mentor that I had that was a musician who taught me about that music is a much, let's bring the Beatles back into this, that pop music started before the Beatles, because for me as a kid, that's where it starts.
Right, all right.
But it was Tiny Tim who taught me about the 1920s and 30s. I recently just recorded a song and I thought of Tiny Tim when I did this, even though he never did this song that I know of, for WNYC radio, which is New York's classical and that's the NYC radio,
kind of, yeah.
a musical radio, correct? They're having their centennial, and they asked me to pick a song from the 1920s. I did. I picked a Cole Porter song. It's just been released through WNYC. I picked "Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love" by Cole Porter. But I love the music of the 20s. It was Tiny Tim who taught me about it. When he did Tiptoe Through the Tulips, that was from 1929. Almost everything he performed was the 1930s or earlier.
Yeah.
And he taught me a lot about that. And I produced an album for him. I'm sure none of the songs on that album that I produced were later from the 1935,
Yeah. I mean, later in life, like so many people, then he started doing a Led Zeppelin cover. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Tiny did a great version of Stairway to Heaven. You're right. And he did great. Yeah. But he did start out doing old songs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But the question then is, first of all, there's so much to unpack here, but in knowing him, you knew that he was savvy. you knew he was kind of, a lot smarter. And then
Oh yeah.
you also said that,
I did.
that voice.
I didn't really know. I mean, I was, like I said, I was a teenager, and I didn't really know. All I knew was the character that we saw on television on, the TV shows. So I didn't really know that Tiny Tim was such a musicologist, and he could recite the record matrix, they call it, matrix number on the cylinders and records that he had. He could recite the label and the number of records, and of course the composers. He was very much always giving credit to the writers of the songs.
But were your parents worried though? Like, because he, at least in his persona and probably his private persona, he's a weirdo. So were your parents when you were 14, 15, it's like, we're going to be in the room. Just,
No,
no.
no, my parents loved Tiny Tim. I brought him to the house right away, and he brought his shopping bag and ukulele and sheet music. And no, my parents were not that way. They were not conservative in that way, and they were not in fear of that, of any kind of like.
No, he certainly was brilliant in his way, but also not a normal. Yeah, so many musicians are not.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it was shocking when I first met him, and it was if you like to hear, I'll tell you, when I first met him, he was performing at a very small venue. And sadly, it was not that long after he had been playing at Royal Albert Hall in London, but he had a big drop in popularity. And by the time I met him, he was playing a very small roadside Travelodge motel bar. So it was a tiny, but I was underage and could not go in the bar to see him. So two girlfriends from school and myself were outside the door listening to him. When he burst out, and he did burst out with his ukulele, he saw us waiting and he said, "How did you enjoy the show?" And we told him, "Well, we couldn't get in. We were underage, but we listened and it was great." And he goes, "Well, I'll do the whole song for you," he said, "in my hotel room."
Again, but yeah, no, but
yes,
he
really meant it.
He
didn't mean an orgy. He meant, I'll play you the music. So he did. He sat on his bed with his ukulele, put the sheet music all out, and did all these songs for us, and did an entire show. And that's how we became friends.
That you recorded it. I've listened to a bit of the time that you did two of them. One, His America, but what's the first?
Yeah. The first one is called "I've Never Seen a Straight Banana."
I've never seen it. Yeah, I've never seen a straight banana.
The song from 1935 or so. Yeah.
But it sat in quote unquote your vault or probably your apartments, whatever.
Yeah.
25 years or.
It did. I had no, because at that time, even though I had been on the radio, I did not have record company connections in New York. I was in Tampa, Florida, which frankly is an outpost. It's like a far planet from New York. And I didn't have any connections. So it took me a while. And then when I got signed to RCA with the Bongos, I couldn't very well bring them a Tiny Tim album. It just wasn't going to happen. So it was only as a solo artist later, when I had more connections, I could go to a label and say, "Hey, I've got this Tiny Tim album that I produced." And then it was, "Yes, let's do it." And I was able to finish it and put it out in 2009.
I remember Brave Combo brought out a record with him.
They did like a polka. They did like a polka album, right? Was that? Yeah.
No, I think they did more than that. Or it was Brave Combo backing him.
So
it had that polka feeling.
It was great. It was great. I love that too. Yeah.
So,
but I promised. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rabbi.
No,
I promised Tiny Tim that I would somehow get that out one day. And when I moved to New York, I happened to bump into Tiny Tim then in a movie theater, and he was with his then wife, Miss. There were three wives. This was Miss Jan. No, I think he was with Miss Jan at that point. So with Miss Jan, he said, "Oh, Mr. Barone, you must release the music that we did. It was so special." I said, "Yes, I know." And at that point, I made it a mission to find a way to get it out eventually.
But it was after he was long gone.
By the time it came out, he had passed. He died in 1996.
So let me also ask you other people that you have produced.
Yeah.
I was about to talk about your own music and the Bongos and things like that. So what other memorable people?
Oh, they're also memorable. And I've worked with all kinds of levels of different popularities. But I would say that I don't want to say favorites because I love them all. But I think Pete Seeger, we're producing one of Pete Seeger's last recordings, certainly his last single song, was an honor and thrill for me, because he embodies the idea of a song having a message, a political message, or just a social message. And I learned so much from being around Pete for the last few years of his life. And he invited me to perform with him many times. In fact, his schedule in his 90s was a more grueling performing schedule than mine was. He was playing all the time in his 90s. And I got to be on stage with him several times, singing harmonies, and also producing his last single, which was called God's Counting on Me, God's Counting on You. It's on YouTube. People can find the video of us recording it, because I decided we have to, at the last minute, we have to film this. Because he wanted to record on this Clearwater boat, on the ship, on the boat while sailing.
On the water that he helped
On the
clean
water
up.
that he helped clean up.
Right.
So it was all very symbolic. And at the last minute, I called a film crew and we filmed it. It's on YouTube.
Oh, that's one. Do you have any Seeger specific funny or anecdotes or
Everything was funny. He was very funny. He was, the thing was showing him, okay, since we're on is your platform on YouTube? Will we be broadcasting this on YouTube eventually?
The live show is on Facebook, but the recording goes on YouTube.
Of course. Well, Pete didn't know about YouTube. So my partner who I was recording with, Matthew, Billy, and I brought him a laptop and said, we want to show you YouTube so you can see how many people you can reach. So Pete was just amazed, and he just kept saying, oh my God, that was the sweetest thing to me. So it's, oh my goodness. Like, he saw the idea that if we made a video, we could reach so many more people than he could normally reach. And that's why he let us do it and let us produce it and film it.
So let me ask you, and especially if they're dead, who were horrible?
No, nobody was horrible. Nobody was horrible. Nobody.
Really?
Because when I go in a studio or I'm in a situation working with someone, I'm not going to let it get horrible. I'm sorry. I don't go there. I don't go to horrible.
Well, what if they're drunk, or what if
they're not drunk? They're not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me. Like, I've worked with artists at all different conditions. I'm telling you that it doesn't affect. I will focus and make it a great experience for all of us. I do. That's my job. That's my producing job, I think.
Well, yeah. Well, no.
I think that when someone calls me, when someone allows me to produce or hires me to produce or asks me to produce, the whole thing is, how do we make it fabulous? Not just the result, but the experience.
So when they come into a song, is it the production, what you hear in your head, or what the artist is like, I want it to sound like this, or is it a combination?
It's a combination. At first, I ask them what they like, what they want. I'm working with a very young band now. They go by the name Eater Life. They're just out of high school. They're very good. And they're kind of punk rock, But again, it's like, well, what do you like? Tell me what you want to hear, or what you like to hear. What do you listen to? And I hang out with them, and I go to the rehearsal studio. I listen to what they're listening to. I listen to them practice. And then again, it goes in my head. And yes, I do mean that. And then I talk to them about, like, how do we approach this song? What are you feeling about it? It's really feeling. Like, what does this feel like to you? And then we try to get a sound that will do that. And it's different for every artist. When I worked with Liza Minnelli, and she was with my very good friend who was also working with me with my music, was Johnny Rogers, piano player. They did a duet together, and I got to produce it with a big band. Like, with her, the whole vibe was to, how do I make her feel like she's on stage performing?
So you bring the Sinatra.
We had the whole vibe. We had two drummers, and we had a big horn section behind her. So when she came into the studio, I had her surrounded by, as if she was on a Vegas stage or something, or Radio City. We just had it felt like a stage, and she was able to do her duet with Johnny in like a stage setting. Now, not every artist is like that. With these kids I'm producing right now, the singer is so introverted that he wants to be in a corner, crawled up into the darkness of a vocal booth, because he doesn't want to even see anybody.
Does it also even come down to choosing a particular microphone?
Yes, it comes down to choosing a microphone. Absolutely. I love having an array. It's like, think of a painting and the way you have different brushes and palettes of colors. Well, the microphones are like that. So for me, I like old ribbon microphones from the 1950s. I like to sound like Elvis Presley. I want an old vintage, what they call, ribbon microphone. And I use that for certain singers. I use ribbon. It's very detailed. It's very revealing. It doesn't add false hype, hyper electronics. It doesn't do that. It's very plain sounding, but it works for some singers. Other artists need more of a boost. For those, we use like a modern electronic transistorized microphone that's going to push their voice more. So yeah, it's different for every vocalist.
When I do the Shabbos services and I'm singing, I actually use auto-tune live.
Oh, do you really? No,
Yeah.
you don't. Oh, you don't. Really? Yes, you could. You could be totally well, yeah, you could do it. Akon, is that you could be the next
I could.
auto-tuned pop star. You really could easily be.
I believe this.
You've got the look. You've got the look.
I have the face for radio. I do.
You have the perfect face for radio, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. By the way, we're talking with Richard Barone here. Want to also tell you or ask you, of course, more questions. Now, I didn't, of course, I'm always going to want the dirt things. Oh, tell me something naughty about it, and you're not going there. But tell me then something nice even about knowing and perhaps working with Lou Reed.
Oh, Lou Reed was very nice. Lou Reed was one of the sweetest guys I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
For me. Now, he could be a hard ass and he could be brutal to recording engineers, anyone he thought was a phony. He could be absolutely brutal. I witnessed it, but I've also heard the stories in the music industry about this. But to me, I met him when I was 18. I first came to New York and I was in a guitar shop, trading in my beat up guitar because I took a train here, and on the train ride, the guitar got messed up. So I had to trade it in for a new one. Lou Reed happened to be in the shop. And I spoke with Mr. Reed, and he suggested a guitar that would be good for me, which was a Rickenbacker, which was unusual because he did not play a Rickenbacker. But after asking me what I liked, which I included the Beatles, which I know he wasn't really verbally or outwardly not a Beatles fan, but he did point to a 1965 Rickenbacker and said, I think that might be good for you. And I tried it. It was my guitar that I had for years with the Bongos. That was my sound.
Wasn't the Rickenbacker the Byrds guitar? Wasn't that?
Yes.
Roger McGuinn's.
Yeah. That's right. John Lennon used to play that with the first Beatles. The first time we saw the Beatles on television, he's got a Rickenbacker, and has these pointy horns. The Byrds also, of course, being Beatles fans, that speaking of Greenwich Village, when Roger McGuinn, then named Jim McGuinn before he changed it to Roger, played in the Village, the sign outside the Gaslight said, Jim McGuinn Beatle impersonations.
Was that? And was he?
Yes, he did their songs. He was doing covers of the Beatles at that point. This is before he went to California to start the Byrds. But anyway, my point is that that's probably where he got the idea of the Rickenbacker. They were used by the Beatles a lot, in pictures. By the time they did A Hard Day's Night, I'm not sure then, had the Byrds even come out yet? Maybe not quite. But in that movie, George Harrison has a 12-string Rickenbacker.
Wow. Now, let me ask you again then, and I'm not a tech savvy, or I don't know any of this, but what is your guitar of preference now?
That's so easy. I play since I met Les Paul, I only play Les Paul. Period. I have several Les Paul guitars. I have an old vintage special. It's called a Special, which is a very simple Les Paul that I use as my baby. I have also his last model Les Paul, which was a digital Les Paul that he made just before he passed in 2000. So he made this around 2005, 2006. He was experimenting with digital. And so that has two normal pickups and then also a digital pickup. I use that in the studio. And on my new recording, I have a recording coming out in about 4 weeks, a duet with Daryl DMC McDaniels from Run DMC. It's a duet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I used the digital Les Paul for that.
By the way, what's the name of the song?
The song is called All Fall Down, and it goes out to all dictators.
Oh, well, Gahalabai, unless Israel kills them first.
That's right.
So,
but anyway, yeah, but that's so the Les Paul guitar is my go-to. It's been since the Rickenbackers. After a while, I love nothing bad about Rickenbacker. They were great. I had 16 of them at one point. But I will say that sometimes I would have trouble on stage with them staying in tune because I'm a little on the aggressive side. It comes from my punk. It's a lot of hitting. So I found the Les Pauls stay in tune, and that as soon as I realized that, that solid mahogany guitar, that became my guitar.
And for acoustic and electric, or
No, for acoustic, I use also a Gibson. I use a Gibson. I use the John Lennon model, which is called the J160E, which is what the Beatles had, the big jumbo acoustics with two knobs, volume and treble, and volume and tone. And I love it. That's my favorite. It's acoustic. It's really an electric acoustic, but it sounds great. They came out with that in 1962, I believe, and it's always been my favorite model.
now also speaking, going back to the oldish days.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the days when you were in the band, the Bongos, and they were, they were having some serious popularity on MTV.
Oh yeah.
And you were opening for some pretty big, B-52s, I think you were. So
yeah.
poised to be big.
Yeah.
How did you get through not quite being big?
Well, it's fascinating. It's a story. It's like the different paths you take. For one thing, when the Bongos started, we were excited just to put out a 7-inch vinyl record. Our goals were to have fun. The Bongos' mission was to have a great time and to have a great time with our audiences and make a record, which we did pretty quickly on. We were signed within 3 months of being together. We were signed to a British label and were brought over to England to perform at the Rainbow Theatre, which was a lot of things happened quickly for us that were kind of like goal achieving things. So everything else was icing on the cake for me and for us. We had a blast going on tour and performing for people and playing these songs. And I had fun writing the songs for the Bongos. But there came a time when it's like, okay, we probably, you're right. If we would have stuck it out a little longer, we could have done what our friends, a lot of friends of ours and associates and bands that would open for us would do. But we decided to kind of stop. And we were in the Bahamas recording. Chris Blackwell from Island Records had invited us to Compass Point Studios to record. And we kind of never finished the album. We kind of lost the desire to make that album. That would have been probably a big, like you're talking about. We just didn't do it. We didn't finish it. We came back. It did finally come out in 2012, like the Tiny Tim album. It was in I had the tapes,
Hey, unlike Taylor Swift, you own your masters. Smart.
I do have the masters, yeah. So, I had the tapes. I thought, okay, well, why don't we finish that and put it out? We had a label offer us to put it out that knew about it. And it was really fun, but it was, of course, years later. We just got to the point where it wasn't fun. And so we wanted to do our own things. I started doing solo shows. I really got into the Greenwich Village scene here. I wanted to feel what it was like to play again to small
in the
audiences.
80s, 90s, though, this would go 90s.
Yeah, the end of the 80s, yeah.
Was that the new folk revival? Was that when Tracy Chapman?
Yes. Yeah, but I was just at that time, but maybe right before Tracy Chapman. Around the time of Tracy Chapman, you're absolutely right. But I knew Suzanne Vega, and there was a new scene, happening, and I thought, wow, I want to do acoustic music. After a while, the machinery of the Bongos. I know it sounds silly because we were not like Led Zeppelin, but there was a machinery. There was so much production and tour buses and equipment and all these things that were just like part of the package that made it a lot to even think about, to deal with. But I thought, what if I just go with my acoustic guitar and did a show, maybe with a cello player? And we started doing shows with just like very, very basic. And I made an album at one of those shows. It was called Cool Blue Halo. And it came out in 87. Thank you. And it was very natural for me. And the Bongos were still officially together at that point. But when I made the album, it did well. And it got on a lot of radio stations. And we did there was a couple of songs, like I did the David Bowie song, The Man Who Sold the World, and also a Beatles song, Cry Baby Cry. Those started getting radio play. Yeah. And I toured for 3 years on that album around the world. So the Bongos
and the touring of that album was, you bring your guitar on the plane, you find somebody who plays cello in the neighborhood, and there it is. Yeah.
Kind of. I did bring my own eventually, but we kept it simple and really basic. And we did, yeah, you're right. It was not a lot of amplifiers and lights. It was very simple and fun. And we toured our first big tour with that was with Suzanne Vega, like I just mentioned. We did a double bill in theaters. So it was this beautiful, like a lot of space, and we had a very simple setup. Yeah. It was a thrill for me. And then I kept rolling with that. I got then an offer to sign with Universal Music and did an album called Primal Dream. Again, a solo record. So the Bongos all were doing their own things at that point.
Right.
You know?
Although you still sometimes, you would get
Oh
that.
yeah.
You would think,
It was more rare then, but now last year I think we did about 3 or 4 concerts. We played at Lincoln Center and we did some things in New Jersey, which was our state because we lived in Hoboken. And yeah, I mean, it's really nice to be able to do it now because we've all had a chance to express what we want to do individually.
now let me ask you, you are certainly not an old person. This is very, very obvious. But are you like one of the people who's been on this show and is a friend of the neighborhood is Gary Lucas?
Oh,
And
Gary,
Gary,
I toured a lot with Gary Lucas. You know that.
yeah, well, yeah, but
Yeah.
so I'm asking, but he's always on a plane here. Suddenly he's in Budapest, then he's in Bucharest, then he's in
Yeah.
America, and then the next day he's down in the village playing. Can you still maintain that life? Like, would you tour do a 70 city tour or something like
Yeah. I would if it was the right situation, yeah. But I wouldn't do it. I was with the Bongos, we were doing 300 shows in a row. That was literally killing me. That I don't want to tour in that way, but I would tour what you're talking about, certainly. I mean, 70 shows is nothing. I would do that in a minute.
Well, 70 cities, right? Yeah, you were going
70 cities, I would do that in a minute, yeah. Well, you don't take, when you're on the road, you don't take too many days off because it's too expensive. So you usually, you have to keep rolling. You have to keep moving. The B-52s never took days off. When we toured with them, never, there was, well, maybe one day off, but really rarely. So yeah, I would do it. It just depends on the band, what kind of show I would have. Again, I'm very conceptual. Like if it's a theme and a show that I'm excited about, I would do anything for it.
You would do it 5 times a day. I can feel that you got that. Yeah.
Anything. And if it's something I really want to do, I will do it. Yeah.
Now, here's totally unrelated to music, but how did you get so involved in anthology film archives down with like
Well,
Jonas Mekas and those people?
okay, that's easy because Jonas, I loved Jonas. He was one of my big mentors. Jonas came to me because of Tiny Tim. Did you know that? He
No.
was he was not only a big fan of Tiny Tim, but Jonas considered himself Tiny's first agent. Because Tiny, I was almost said Tony, but Tiny Tim was in the underground part of New York, the scene that involved Andy Warhol and like what was called the Living Theater. Tiny Tim was at all these events and they loved him. He would get up and sing from the audience, and so Jonas loved what Tiny was doing and sort of helped get him his first gigs.
Okay.
Okay,
love
so
how it's all connecting.
it's all connecting. So when the Tiny Tim album that I did came out in 2009 or so, I performed a tribute to Tiny Tim at the Public Theater. And that's where I got a note at soundcheck from Jonas Mekas. And it was, hi, I don't know if you know me, but I was Tiny Tim's first agent and blah, blah, blah. And I knew Jonas because in college, my major was filmmaking, and Jonas was one of my heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So,
Film Archives. I mean, the producer of this program went to NYU for film.
Yeah.
And he was there, and he was at the Bleecker Street Theater that's no longer there, and all. Yeah.
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 So I said, well, Jonas, I do know exactly who you are, and please, can we meet? So we met, we became very good friends, and I started producing events, fundraisers for the Anthology Film Archives. I produced 3 major fundraisers for them.
Like what?
And well, they were at different venues. We did one was called the Hero Ballroom. It's no longer there. It was in the it was 2010s, early 2010s. And then we did City Winery. We did other events where I had Lou Reed was part of it. I had Lou Reed on board because Lou was a big supporter of Jonas. Lou told me he would do anything for Jonas.
It's fine. That's the thing. When Lou thinks you're okay and cool,
Yeah,
he's the best. It's just
Well,
like if there's any
yeah.
sense that you're not, you're the lowest of the low. Yeah.
Well, don't forget with the Velvet Underground, when they first started, they were actually performing for Jonas behind the screen of silent movies.
I thought they were at that club at different.
The Dom, that was later. So the first things they did were at the cinema, I think was what the Cinematheque. And the Cinematheque had, avant-garde films, often silent, and the Velvet Underground were behind the screen performing. Lou and John Cale, etc. This is pre-Nico,
Yeah, right. Do you know John? Did you ever work with Cale?
I met socially, and I went to the same gym with John Cale, but I worked out next to John Cale, but I did not do music with John Cale. I love his music. I love it.
He's actually so. Let me ask you, how much can he press? I'm just
Oh, he was doing a lot of, he was like a Welsh ox at the gym. A
really.
Welsh ox, big and strong,
Now, see,
big and
I see
strong.
you as more aerobic. Am I right? Are you more of
I'm
a?
a robot. Yeah, you can definitely tell. I do cardio every day. Yeah.
And do you do stuff to keep your voice, whatever, or you just
Yeah.
that's natural?
Well, you know how you know it? I sing. I sing a lot.
Oh, but that's good. That's
Yeah.
important too.
I'm a professor at the New School of Jazz and Contemporary Music, and I go there and I use my office or the room. I practice there all the time, as all the students do.
What do you
So
teach? What are your
I
courses?
teach. Well, I teach Music and Revolution as my main class. Music and Revolution, which is my book, my recent book. That's a class. It's a 15-week. It's a semester course. But I also teach improvisation. And we have improvisation ensembles. We create music in the moment.
Whoa. So you just get students with different instruments and
Yeah, well, they sign up and then
bands or yeah.
they sign up and we create. Like, I end up, so I walk in on the semester and I have a band to work with and we create music on the spot. They'll bring material in or we create it on the spot. And so it's like they call it improvisation ensemble.
How do
It's
you
really
grade
good.
that? How do
I
you yeah.
I grade everything by involvement. I grade it by, even with the history class, even with Music and Revolution, which is Greenwich Village in the 1960s.
Yeah.
What I do is we look at material and I ask the students to perform it in class also. Like they were invited to perform it all through the semester. At the end of the course, we do final exams at the bitter end in Greenwich Village. So
Really?
the final exam is held at the bitter end. It's a show, everyone's invited, and they perform the music and they explain why they chose the music they chose to perform.
That's wow. Wow.
That's how I teach that class, and that's how I grade them. If they're involved, they're going to get an A. If they're not involved, they're half involved, they're going to get, lesser
No, I
grades.
figure the music revolution class would just be like a history class. It wouldn't have an actual musical component.
Well,
Yeah.
I request at the New School, I'm able to get a classroom that's actually a theater. So we use the stage. I use it for lecturing, and I use it for a lot of videos. I love to see and I love to show the old clips because I want it to be something very real for them, like that they can feel. But then we perform the songs in class too. I used to perform for them, but now I let them perform. I mean, they want to. So I say, hey, does anybody want to do that song, whatever, and then by the next
They
week,
can probably sight read the chords, so even if they don't
they
know.
can sight read whatever they have to do. Every musician is different. I tend, personally, my charts are very, very simple. I just scroll out a few lines and that's my chart. But they might want to, because they're studying theory, they could write out whatever they want. They do one, like a kid will bring me a beautiful interpretation of a Dylan song that really takes it to a place where I actually like it.
Oh wow, I hope so. Well, if you don't, well.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm
if
just
you
kidding.
don't like it, does he get an F? No.
I appreciate Mr. Zimmerman and
Yeah.
but I like to let the students know that there was a lot more to Greenwich Village than just Bob Dylan. Like Phil Oakes is one of my heroes.
But you're not really known necessarily for being a message songwriter in the way that Billy Bragg or someone like that. I mean, do you consider yourself a messagey kind of guy?
Well,
in music, yeah.
Let me say that I do. There's an activist inside me, and it doesn't all. I feel with music, it's a sacred. I'm dealing with something sacred, and so if something is truly needed to be said that's inside me, it will come out in a song. If it needs to be poetic, then it's poetic. If it needs to just be a headline, it's a headline. And that's really how I approach it. It's really what the song needs it to be. Whatever the feeling that's coming out of me when I pick up my guitar to write a song, then yes, but there are messages. But there's like what they asked about the Beatles, they always said, oh, would you ever write an anti-war song? And they said, what are you talking about? They're all anti-war songs.
Yeah, I got it. No, but
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Like topical. Like we study this in class. Like what is a protest song? What is a topical song? There's so many different definitions of what songs can be. And you're right. I have not written that many topical songs, but I might say to you that the record that's coming out next of mine is a topical song.
This is the one with Run DMC guy?
Yes. Right. It is a topical song. It was deliberately and intentionally from beginning to end a topical song.
Well, no, because I have to say
Yeah.
that I don't really want to bring this up. There was a time I had an activist inside me, but I
Yeah.
was in a jail cell with Abby Hoffman, and he was trying to rape me, and
Oh yeah,
I
I
said, "Stop it!"
understand.
And
I understand, especially Abby, you know.
Abby would tell you.
I know, I know.
Abby,
No,
I
what
wear very tight underwear, so.
as long as you're protected, good.
Oh,
Good.
absolutely. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
we're
good.
talking with the very protected Richard Barone, my friend. Do you have a couple more minutes with us? Because this has been
Sure.
absolutely so delightful and so much fun. And it was so valuable and so interesting and fun. I wish I could take your course, for God's sake. So,
You have to sign up at the new school. You got to get in, you have to get accepted. You know, the students actually, to be in this department, they have to audition.
oh, it's one of those because I could truly.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, it's the Manna School of Music is involved. It's the new school purchased the Manna School of Music. There's a lot of that
Oh,
academic side of music involved, you know.
is
Uh,
guitar your only instrument, or are you conversant on piano and woodwind and other things?
I'll bang on anything.
That's what she said. No, what
Yes.
do you mean? Thank you. So really, but you have some fluidity in lots of different. What's your second instrument?
Well,
Piano or?
well, keyboards. Yeah, I mean, you know, I really like when I worked with Gary Lucas, who you mentioned earlier. I played mellotron. So mellotron is really, which is a rare instrument.
Yeah.
It's really my second instrument. I mean that I use
Is it
that a lot.
Moog Mellotron by any
No,
chance?
no, no. It's just mellotron, which is before Moog.
Yeah.
It was it's tapes. You know, mellotron has tapes inside. It doesn't. It's not electronically created sound. The mellotron has tape recordings of instruments. So when you play the keys, you're playing the tapes. They actually activate the tape starts rolling
Oh my
inside.
God. And
So
this, yeah.
touring with Gary Lucas was, in a way, it was exciting, and Gary Lucas is a fantastic guitar player. But I'll tell you that it was a nightmare because I had to sing the lead vocals and play mellotron, which is never, it was never really quite in tune. I had to like one hand was on the tuning control while I'm trying to play chords and sing his very complex songs. It was really fun though.
And there's the irony. You
Yeah.
finally get a guitar that stays in tune, but the piano
The
you're playing.
keyboard does not stand to it. Right. That was Gary. The band was called Gods and Monsters, and he still
Oh
sometimes
yeah, so
performs it.
you were
Yeah,
in the.
I was part of
Okay.
that. Yeah, after Jeff Buckley passed, uh, Gary called me, and we started working together, and we wrote some songs together, and I went on the road singing as a singer. I tried not to sing Jeff's songs though, because I just felt I knew Jeff too, and I felt uncomfortable with that. So a lot of those became instrumentals for Gary. But I sang other songs, you know. It was really great.
Can I ask if you could point to a song or two of your own, solo
Oh,
or with the bongos or whatever? What
mm,
is like one or two of our proudest
yeah.
moments for you?
Well, you know, I have to say, you know, and it's a maybe it's a cliche, but it's not really because most artists will not say this. But Numbers with Wings, which was actually a song that was played a lot,
Yeah.
is my sometimes my favorite to play because every time I do it, it's different for me. Every single time it's different because it's whatever, it's so open-ended in the lyrics. There's so few lyrics and so simple that it becomes other things enter my mind and it becomes something different. Like I just did it at an event that was honoring a Yippie. You mentioned Abby Hoffman, a Yippie.
Jerry Rubin or
Jim Farrat. You know Jim Farrat? He was one of that crowd. Jim Farrat was part of the Yippie, one of the originators, but then became a music promoter and was my first person that booked the Bongos in New York.
oh my God, okay.
He was he's still a radical. He was a radical, and he's was involved with the Stonewall
Because he
incidents. Yeah,
wasn't one of the Chicago Seven. That's why I was.
no, but he was there. He was there.
Oh my, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but he's good friends with all those guys. And the thing was, they were doing like an honoring thing at La Mama Theater, experimental theater company,
Yeah.
and they asked me to perform. And I chose Numbers with Wings because I got up there, and it's like I can just play it a million different ways. I could get as loud as I want, or it could be as quiet as I want. That song works. It just works for me. So I'm really proud of writing that song. I don't know how to explain it. It's not really pride, but it's like it's like I wrote a useful song for myself to do, you know.
You wrote an evergreen. You wrote,
For me, it's an evergreen because I tell you, it changes meanings. I mean, I don't know how it came. It just appeared in my head, you know. And since then, every time I do it, it's a little bit different.
Can I ask you? You're still writing songs, of course, and
Of
performing.
course, I just signed a new deal with the Sony this week.
By the way, hello,
Yeah.
person who's getting food.
Oh, that's Abraham. Went
Shalom,
away.
Abraham. Who
That
is
Ray
Abraham?
Abraham's. Abraham's my partner.
Oh, Mademoiselle McGlick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, you could have answered when I asked about the wife and the kids. This is your.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
So how long have you been together?
Oh, several years. Yeah.
Mademoiselle McGlick. Is he in the music or not at all, or what does he do?
He loves music.
All right.
He
Yeah,
loves music.
you're keeping a private life.
No, he loves music. That's it. Really true. He loves music. And
What-
I learn by listening to what he chooses to listen to. I hear about new artists that
Oh,
way.
so who are the artists that he's been listening to that you've been listening to?
He listens to a lot of psychedelic. He listens to artists from every era. Sometimes they're new and sometimes they're classic rock.
Right.
Really, it's a huge range. It's too many to mention. But we've gone, sometimes if they're passing through town, we go see some of these obscure Australian psychedelic bands. And I love that. You know, my own music is not as psychedelic as this, you know, as this stuff. But I enjoy letting that influence me.
So
I love being open to influences. You know, it's like I'm always open to going in all different ways, you know.
Well, in this, I'm sorry I interrupted you in terms of the
No.
So when you're still writing a song, is it just you're anywhere and inspiration will hit and you grab a guitar or
a phone, iPhone? Yeah. Sometimes it'll be I'm leaving the gym and all of a sudden a melody, just some interesting melody idea. I'm very, like I said, conceptual. Like sometimes it's like an idea of how a melody could work, and that gets in my head, and like the idea of, say, octaves, the idea of what the shape of a melody looks like. Like, think of like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, like that octave jump of somewhere, that's an octave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I think of shapes of melodies, and sometimes it'll hit me like, what if I did this? And, you know, a different, because, you know, in 2024, we've heard a lot of melodies, and there's been a lot of long years of music. So it's like, how do you do something new? So with me, I think of it almost as a geometrical design. Like, what shape could this melody have? Like, I try to think of unique shapes of melodies. And so I sing it into my phone when I do that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to even visualize a page of music on it. Maybe sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Just like that. Just like you're doing with your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, speaking of also people who know music and would recognize that kind of feeling of it, you worked a bit with producer Tony Visconti.
Tony Visconti is like a brother to me. Yeah.
Oh my
I really admire his work. I grew up listening to, as you know, T-Rex records and David Bowie and glam rock. And his name was on half of them, at least, you know, if not more. And I wanted to work with him when I was a kid. When I was 13, 14, I would see his name, you know. Plus, it sounded kind of Italian. And my name, Barone, is actually a Jewish name, but it is Italian Jewish. It's Sephardic Jewish. So, you know, I'm Italian. So, you know, seeing a Visconti and a Barone, you know, it's like, it's just, I thought, well, maybe you don't have to be British to be a rock star. You know, it was a good, it was a good thing as a kid, you know, to see his name. But then I got to meet him in New York. He lived in England during all those years, but then moved back to New York. He was from Brooklyn. And we met and started writing songs together. And when we wrote, because he's a producer, we would start recording and arranging as we wrote the song, which is different than I had done before. Because usually I wrote the song, it was like a raw outline. And then with the producer or whoever, then we'd flesh it out. But with Tony, we would write and then right then create what it's going to sound like. And what was cool was that we had access to the then new Apple product called Logic, which was a new software. It came from a German company. Apple bought it. And they were just getting ready to launch it. And I knew someone at Apple, and they said, would you and Tony like try this software out? So we were able to have a new software to work with called Logic. And then we were also on the phone with Apple support all the time. I tried to get it. But it was a very good experience for both of us, because we were able to write the songs and instantly start making a record out of it.
Oh my God, that's hey, it reminds me, I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm gonna use the D word. Dylan, when he was
he's okay. No, he's okay. He's an icon. He's beyond love or hate, he's Dylan, yeah,
No, I'm saying he would,
yeah,
obviously, as you know, the Blonde on Blonde record,
yeah, with great
you wait in the
album,
studio, guys. I'm just going
yeah.
to go in the other room, write some lyrics, and we'll just, here's how it goes.
Bowie, I think was like that. I got to sing backup because of Tony on 2 Bowie songs. Now, I would always ask Tony, well, how was it working with him? And similarly, I think when they were doing Heroes, the Heroes album, for instance, which I really like, I think David Bowie would go off into a corner and work on his lyrics, but it was really part of the creative process. That's why I was thrilled to work with Tony in this way, where we're recording as we're creating, instead of having it all done. I used to make intricate demos and then have to go in at home and then have to go into the studio and try to recreate it. It was just such working backwards. This way was all one process.
As they say, organic almost.
Organic, yeah. So
Do
it
you
was
have a Bowie
organic.
story? Since you sang with for him and do you have any Bowie stories?
No, except that was a super nice guy and so professional that it was unbelievable
I mean,
to see it.
I don't mean a nasty bad. I mean,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
no, I don't think there would be for me. There would certainly not be a bad story, but it would be only
yeah.
an inspiration, the inspiration of seeing him with that voice, with his famous voice, going out into the room to sing a song in one take and not looking back. Because as a singer, for me, I'm always looking back. I'm like, how could I fix that? How could I better redo that? Or I think I should sing that ending again or something. It was a performance that he did and he sang it and that was it. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not normal. That's most artists, like even like Barbara Streisand, like who's considered a great vocalist. She will meticulously, the stories go from the industry, from what I've heard. I mean, she meticulously, every syllable, every consonant, every vowel, it's all, she has to just do it till it's absolutely perfect. And this was just doing it like a free form performance.
What
And
was Liza like? Was she in the middle? Was Liza between?
Liza was in the middle because Liza would do, we didn't do it just in one take. No, we did a few takes, but again, like a performance, but not as the idea of the one take thing. She wasn't really that, she didn't care. I don't think she was so adamant that it'd be one take. She was wanting to get it to sound great. So she would come in, she's like me, she would come into the room and listen back to the recording and say, oh, I hear that. Okay, I see what I can do differently. That's a different approach. I was talking to someone on the phone yesterday, a famous musician, and he said, and I described that scene with Bowie to him, and he was going, yeah, that's an artist, because you just paint, it's like, you just, boom, that's my art. That's
Now,
one
how
way
come
to
you
do it.
can't tell me? Name drop. Who's this famous musician that you're?
I don't want to say yet. No.
But how do you
No.
not? Here's a question, because we can see from your personality that you probably get along with pretty much everybody in the universe. But how do you work with a Visconti, with a Bowie, with a Reed, and not
Yeah.
feel like, yes, master? How do you
Oh,
not get
I,
cowed by that?
I will admit that with David Bowie, I was starstruck. With David Bowie, and I had met him a few times. I met him before I met Tony. I met him when he was in the play called The Elephant Man on Broadway.
Right? Yeah.
And there was a club near the theater district called Hurrah. It was a dance club and it was a rock club. And I was there to see a band, and he came in after his Elephant Man performance to see the same band. So there weren't that many people there. I saw him and I went over and I said, excuse me, are you David? And it's David. He's very nice, extremely low key, quiet, and sort of a modest, you might say, But I wasn't starstruck that first time. But when I met him again, and I think especially when he was with Iman, his wife, I was absolutely starstruck. He was an absolute star, and everything about him exuded Bowie,
Right.
And I think he's the only one I was ever starstruck by. Everybody else I've been very down to earth with, but he was just a little different for me. It's in my own head because
Yeah. No.
he did not put on airs. He was, again, down to earth. But for me, it was I was in the present.
Then sort of not a reverse question, but
Yeah.
of these incredible celebrities and stars that you sung or worked with or produced, whom would we be surprised are really, really cool and down to earth when we would think,
Oh,
God,
oh,
so and so.
almost all of them. I mean, I remember in 2003, 2004, I was doing tributes to Peggy Lee, who I loved, singer. And I had a cast of singers you would not believe. I had B. Arthur, I had Nancy. I mean, I know B. Arthur.
Hey, Arthur!
That
Hey,
and
the goddess!
incredible, and so cool to work with. Like I remember, I was directing B, and she wanted the direction from me, and I was a bleach blonde kid at that point, punk rocked out, and I was directing B, and she was just so open to direction and doing exactly what we planned. Unbelievable, so nice and so funny and kind. And my mother taught me about stars. My mother told me what stars were. And she said, the stars are respectful and stars know how to treat their fans. And these people know that I'm there. B. Arthur knew I was a fan. And she was extremely respectful to me. Nancy Sinatra is another who was, at her, when she was a young woman, she was top of the charts.
These boots
And,
are made for walking.
and exactly. And she still had all the glamour, everything about her had all the glamour of a superstar when I was with her, but she was so down to earth and kind and nice to me. In that show, I also had Debbie Harry, who I still work with once in a while at shows. We end up on the stage together sometimes. They're all of these people I'm mentioning are down to earth.
I'm sorry but since
No,
you mentioned, have you ever met or worked with or seen either Nancy Sinatra's dad or the late Tony
no,
Bennett?
I never met Frank Sinatra. I wish I would have. I would.
Tony Bennett, did you ever?
No, not really. No, I
So,
would
of
have loved it. I would have loved it.
course, yeah,
I
yeah.
had invited him to do certain events that I produced because he would have fit right in, but often he was limiting the number of shows he would do. As he got older, he would limit the number of performances per year, and I never really got in that, was never able to get him.
Terry
But
Como, maybe Andy Williams, any of
I
that?
would have loved it. I love it. I love all those guys. I love all old. I tried to do a tribute to Dean Martin. He had already passed, but I was working with Dina Martin, his daughter. And for his centennial, I was trying to get a show together. But sadly, everyone I wanted had passed. I tried to get Joey Bishop at least, And the thing was, just as the show was being in progress of being created, he passed. And Sammy Davis and even Jerry Lewis. I mean, he would have been I wanted all these people to be in the Dean Martin.
Oh, and then that roast. I'm wondering. So now the thing is, you got to find someone who's old but in reasonably decent shape. Like I've got a month. Let me find the people who.
Well, it's really when I've done tribute shows, it's to people that it means something to me so much. And when I grew up, Dean Martin's music, my parents played it. And I loved it, so that's why I wanted to do a Dean Martin tribute. But my next tribute is for a living person who's quite fantastic. Is George Takei from Star Trek.
Wait, George. What songs did he ever do?
Well, no, he did. Believe it or not, he had a Broadway right before the pandemic.
Oh,
he
yeah,
had a
the
Broadway
music,
show,
about
Allegiance.
the camps. Right,
Yeah, he was in a camp. I mean, but we're doing a tribute to him in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, on November 18th.
And who's going to?
A lot of Broadway-related artists and some other favorites of his that we got into the show, and some Japanese artists. It's really very great, very good show.
Oh my God, Takei! The fact that you know both Takei and B. Arthur is just absolutely, unbelievably mind-blowing.
But it's a big world. It's a big world, and there's so many great people to work with. But George Takei, that's going to be a fun, and with a lot of space-themed songs in that show, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I know Shatner probably declined, but you never know. You never know. Anyway,
I'm excited about that. Show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're going to be excited about a couple of things. First of all, if you want to find out what Richard Barone is doing, you got to go to his website, RICHARDBARONE.com. BARONE, the Jewish spelling. BARONE.com. RICHARDBARONE.com. Now, among the things that he is doing, now I have 2 different days here for the Bolan birthday bash.
Because the September 26th is the premiere of the movie. And then the 28th is a concert. The day in between is so we can rehearse for the show.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the film premiere is at the Grammy Museum in Los Angeles.
Grammy Museum in LA, and the premiere is on the 26th, and then the concert is on the 28th.
That's right.
In LA, and then you've got the song coming out with McDaniel from
Daryl DMC McDaniels from Run DMC, and it's called All Fall Down. That'll be coming out, I think, right at the end of August, end of this month.
Yeah. And do you have any big plans for like next year already? Because I can see that the wheels did. Well, you got the album. You got the song. Well, the album. Yeah.
There's going to be more songs, and I'm thrilled to be writing with some great songwriters, and I plan to have some guest appearances on the album. So as you know, I work with a lot of people, So it would be a shame not to invite them to be on the album, you know?
La, la, la.
I need a cancer. Would you do it? Yeah.
It would be my absolute pleasure and honor. My last question for Richard Barone is, so many people, and since you've also done a lot of stuff for the theater, where you were involved in
Yeah.
too, as a matter of fact. But you've got Jill Sabule, she had a hit off
Oh yeah.
Broadway show.
That's right. I have a song in that, Bitter, I wrote with Jill for that, in that
You
show.
co-wrote Bitter. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bitter.
I co-wrote that with her.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah.
So he's good. He's so good.
Yeah.
What about, have you ever wanted to dabble in writing another musical, a musical?
Maybe.
Because
Again, you went out? Okay, see you later. It all comes out with, it all comes down to what is on my mind. I mean, I would love to write a musical, but the idea has to be really strong. I do have some ideas for musicals, though. One that's never been done, and I think is a hit. I think it's a hit.
Don't give it away. Don't tell.
I can't. But I have permission to do it. It's based on a book, and I have permission, so that might happen one day. I don't know when. Yeah.
Well, then you have to keep us posted. We have to
Absolutely.
have it back in the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
It has been so much for the positive energy, and then just the wonderful stories, and just so wonderful talking to Richard Barone. RichardBarone.com is his website. And all I can do is wish you mazel miklik, much more music, much more energy, much more love of what you are doing and continuing to do, and much more teaching too. So
thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi.
An honor, and shalom.
Okay. Shalom.
Bye-bye.
See you next time. Bye.